Hello, friends. This is the Netarts Friends Church podcast. We are Jesus people, Kingdom of God people, welcoming, yearning, sharing. And we're glad you're connecting here with us. We'd love to connect in person as well. If you're inclined to support this podcast or for more information, just hop on over to netartsfriends.org. That's netartsfriends.org. Let's jump into today's sermon. The words of Jesus in the Sermon on the Plain, Luke chapter 6, verse 35 through 42. Love your enemies, do good to them, and lend to them without expecting to get anything back. Then your reward will be great, and you will be children of the Most High, because He is kind to the ungrateful and to the wicked. Be merciful, just as your Father is merciful. Do not judge, and you will not be judged. Do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over, will be poured into your lap. For with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. He also told them this parable. Can the blind lead the blind? Will they not both fall into a pit? The student is not above the teacher, but everyone who is fully trained will be like their teacher. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, "Brother, let me take the speck out of your eye," when you yourself fail to see the plank in your own eye? You hypocrite! First take the plank out of your eye, then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. In Jesus' day, there was no middle class. There were the wealthy, the top 1 to 2% elites, and then there was the majority poor, a very small merchant class, but mostly the majority poor. And Jesus spoke these words to people who were longing for change, and they probably felt stuck. Their land and their farms had been taken away from them, their income had been taken, their honor, their status had been taken. For many, they had lost the ability to worship in the temple because they couldn't afford the temple tax, and they had been reduced to being called the derogatory name, the people of the land. They were the day laborers, the expendables, those stuck in debt slavery, and they could blame the top 1 to 2%, the greedy, wealthy elites who had used corrupt, underhanded methods, exorbitant interest rates to gobble up their small farms until they owned vast estates. Or they could blame the Roman Empire. Jesus spoke these words to people who didn't know where their next meal was coming from. They only owned one garment, and that was the garment they were wearing. They were the majority poor, beat down by grueling inequities and injustices, and you can be sure that many of them felt like they had every reason in the book to judge the wealthy elites, to condemn their enemies, to not forgive those who had taken their land and their quality of life, and forget generosity or loaning their enemies anything. What did they have to give? Talk about feeling powerless. Talk about feeling like someone else is the problem. You can be sure that they would relish the opportunity to pick some specks or some logs out of their enemy's eyes and teach them a lesson. So, a quick discussion or reflection question. Imagine being a poor day laborer listening to Jesus. What would your first reaction be to what Jesus said? So go ahead and reflect on that for a minute. All right, let's fast forward to today. Underneath every time you feel powerless or like someone else is the problem, what you're longing for is some kind of change. Every one of us is a part of various relationship networks where we long for change. You might look at your marriage or a significant relationship, and there are things you wish were different in that relationship. Or maybe it's work. It probably isn't hard to make a list of things that you would like to change there. Or you look at your children or your family or your extended family with all of their weird idiosyncrasies and dysfunction, and there are probably some things you wish you could change. You look at your church family. What do each of us bring to the table and what don't we bring to the table? And there are probably some things you wish you could change. You look at Tillamook County, and it isn't hard to come up with a list of things that you wish you could change. And then you zoom that lens out to include Oregon, the US, planet Earth, and the list of things you wish you could change only grows. The tough thing about the changes that you long for is that many changes that you long for involve other people. They are outside of your control, which quickly leads to feeling powerless and like other people are the problem. Like, goodness, if I could just get my wife or my husband to get their stuff together, or if my kids would just learn their lesson, or if my boss would stop being such a ... or if the people in my church would actually step up to the plate and ... or if that person at work could actually learn to ... or if the people in the yearly meeting wouldn't be so ... or if my mother-in-law would stop ... or if those drug addicts would actually take responsibility and ... or if those politicians would get their act together and ... if those liberals would ... if those conservatives would just ... and on and on and on. When you feel stuck in a situation where you long for change, but the change is outside of your control, what happens next feels almost inevitable. It's so easy to start judging others, which means to separate, to discriminate, to pick and choose, to criticize, to conclude there is a difference between you and them. Your judgments come from your gut, your emotions, your thoughts, your knowledge, your logic, your education, your research, and you are certain that you are right. God created humans to know nothing of judgment. Remember the story of the tree of knowledge of good and evil in the Garden of Eden? The serpent tempted Eve into judgment. God knows that when you eat from this tree, your eyes will be open and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. The root of judgment is that I get to sit in the place of God over someone. I act like God over them. I claim to know good and evil. I become prosecutor, judge, jury, hangman in someone else's case. And so this process, it just has this inevitable flow. You judge them, you start to condemn them, which involves fantasizing about what they actually deserve, according to you. Thoughts of punishment, and you have this fixation on what they owe you, and they should have to pay for what they've done. And you start imagining that you know their motives and begin painting them with dark colors in your mind, and bitterness begins to grow in you. It becomes nearly impossible to wish them well when you think of them because your heart's too tied up with pain and anguish and hurt, and it all is turning into hatred. It's turning into ill will. And the more that grows, the less generous your view of them becomes, the more you see everything about them in a negative light. The longer the snowball rolls, the more and more they look like they are the problem. They are even a monster. And Jesus steps into this chaos and he offers two prohibitions, two do not statements, and two commands. And they all go together. they're all meant to be understood as a single unit of thought. It's like this is all one thing, really. Jesus says, do not judge, do not condemn, forgive and give. Now, why would Jesus say something like this? Why would Jesus tell people who are already oppressed and exploited to lend to their enemies without expecting to get anything back? That is a literal quote from Luke chapter 6. And it sounds like letting other people take advantage of you even more. What was Jesus getting at? Well, what Jesus was saying in the first century in Palestine, ancient Palestine, is actually something that family systems theorist Murray Bowen discovered in the 20th century. So if we fast forward through time, in the 1950s, Dr. Murray Bowen was working at the National Institute of Mental Health with patients who'd been diagnosed with schizophrenia. And up to that point, the treatment approaches for mental health patients were highly individual. Like all the focus was on the identified patient. They are the problem. They have the problem. That was the way that the thinking went. But as Dr. Bowen worked with his patients, he made a discovery. He noticed that on family visiting day, when the patients' families would come to see them, his patients who had been relatively stable would fall apart. They would have regressions in all kinds of ways when their family visited, which led him to develop family systems theory, which basically says that every relationship network, every family, every workplace, every church, every community is highly interconnected and interdependent. Everyone's affecting everyone, often in ways they don't realize. We're constantly reacting to one another's anxiety and triggers in ways that we don't realize, and unresolved emotional issues and issues of enmeshment or cutoff, they all have a ripple effect. Patterns of relating to one another become stuck and predictable, which means that what people are fighting about may change, but the way that they're fighting gets stuck in a pattern. So the content may change, but the process is the same. And that's where Murray Bowen focused. There's an interconnectedness to the health of an entire family. And he came to believe that the illness didn't simply reside in one patient, but oftentimes it resided in the space between people. And it led him to begin treating families instead of individuals and working with each person on self-differentiation. And in the process, Murray Bowen came to realize something. And that is that when even one person in the family system changes their role or their behavior, it has a ripple effect throughout the entire family system. The entire family adapts in order to restore equilibrium. Other people change their role and their behavior, which can move things in a positive direction. So when even one person breaks free from a predictable and stuck pattern, it can potentially bring healing to the entire system. Author Steve Cuss tells this simple story that really illustrates this. So he tells the story of his son coming home from a basketball practice and complaining to his dad about another kid on the team. He said, William's a ball hog. He never passes me the ball. And so Steve Cuss said, well, what do you do? And his son says, he doesn't pass to me, so I don't pass to him. It's like that was his sense of justice. And it was a stuck pattern. So Steve told his son, he said, listen, the next 6 times that you get the ball, I want you to pass it to him. His son says, but Dad, that's rewarding his ball hogging ways. He should be the one to pass the ball first. And Steve says, please trust me. It'll change everything. And his son actually did trust him and followed through, and it did change everything. The two actually became friends. William started passing the ball after a while to Steve's son. And it's interesting, they never talked about the content. They never had a big conversation about who's passing who the ball, but his son changed the process, and it changed everything. A lot of people look at their situation through a very individual lens and they say, well, I can't do anything to fix this problem in my marriage or my family or my work or my community because I'm not the problem. I'm not the one who needs to change. They are the ones who need to change. They are the problem. And what Murray Bowen found with family systems theory is that you are already a part of the health and the unhealth of the emotional system, and you have much more power than you think to change your situation simply by changing yourself, by facing the unhealth within yourself and becoming the most healthy version of yourself, being fully connected to self and others. So, the most impactful thing you can do to change your situation isn't to force that other person to live according to your standards or demanding that they see things your way or demanding that they admit that you've got it right. The most impactful thing you can do is to pull the log out of your own eye. The irony is that everything you want to judge in other people in some way reveals something about you that you don't want to face. The illness doesn't just reside in the individual, it's in the entire emotional relational system. And so the most impactful thing you can do is work on yourself, not others. It's focus on your reactivity rather than the behavior of others. Face your own unhealthy, stuck patterns. Face your untamed emotions. Face your ego and your impure motives. Face your need to be needed. Face your wounds, your resentment, your trauma, your bitterness, your self-protective tendencies, your reactive tendencies, your bias, your prejudice, your blind spots, your unhealthy habits. Recognize generational patterns and narratives that have been handed down to you and lean into what it means for you to be healthy and whole. Work on your own integrity. Work on the way that you show up in the situation instead of trying to figure out techniques to motivate or manipulate the other person to do what you think is right. And of course, as Christians, we understand this journey to wholeness beginning by recognizing our need for saving, which is there's stuff about me that I can't fix. It's a deeper problem than I know how to solve, and I need help. I need the great physician. God, help me with all of this. What Murray Bowen discovered, and what I've been kind of describing here, he called it family systems theory, and it's the same truth that Jesus was teaching in ancient Palestine when he said, do not judge, do not condemn, forgive and give. Back to your life. Even though Jesus says these words, there are a number of places that we get hung up where we fail to lean into what Jesus asks us to lean into. We can get hung up on the content of the situation. Like we're certain that we're right, we're certain that the other person is wrong, and we're so hung up on the content that we can't see the process. We can't see that we're cycling in a stuck pattern where we're just fighting in the same way, which keeps us from doing anything new or different. Ian Cron says, what you focus on determines what you miss. It's like we just can't see it. We can get hung up with trusting what Jesus promises. Jesus says, "Give and it will be given to you, a good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, and it will be poured into your lap. With the measure you use, it will be measured to you." And on the one hand, Jesus is describing maybe exactly what you want, but on the other hand, the way of getting there might feel like it defies all logic and instinct. It's like, why would I pass the ball to a ball hog? Or why would I be kind and warm and caring when my spouse is cold and rude and selfish? Why would I compliment a bully? Why would I offer to cover a shift at work for the person who's always rude to me? Why would I go the extra mile for someone who's taking advantage of me? We can get hung up because the other person in our mind doesn't deserve anything good. If we're gut level honest, it's possible we don't want the Most High to be kind to the ungrateful and the wicked because we want to see that other person. We feel like they should have to suffer like they made me suffer. They should have to pay. They should have to make this right. They should be the one giving to me. And so the last thing that we're ready to think about is, well, what do I need to work on? What do I need to change? So, with that said, I want to invite you into an imaginative prayer exercise that invites you to listen to Jesus and have a conversation with Jesus. So I invite you to close your eyes if you can, get comfortable, pay attention to your breathing. Take some deep breaths in, let them out slowly. There's a person, at least one, who has been in your mind as we've been talking about all this. They're a person who pushes your buttons, they trigger you, they set you off, they cause your mind to spin about why you're right and why they're wrong. And Jesus is opening up a conversation with you about them. So I want you to imagine that you're sitting at a table with Jesus, and spread out in front of you is a jigsaw puzzle. The puzzle is a picture of this person and their life. And you've managed to put some of the puzzle pieces together, and other pieces are still scattered. Some of the puzzle pieces are face down, and you can't even see what they are. The puzzle that you're looking at is a puzzle that you've been building in your mind. You've tried to understand the chain of events and why this person did what they did, why they are the way that they are. This is just your mind trying to make sense of a difficult experience with them. And you've been putting the pieces of that puzzle together in your mind according to your thoughts and your memories, which always includes your interpretation, according to your emotions and your mood and your best guesses. You may have been working on this puzzle for a day. You may have been working on it for years. You have the puzzle pieces of their life, and you've put them together according to your positive evaluations and your negative evaluations of this person. And you might have a halfway accurate puzzle. You might have some of the connections right, but you're also missing many crucial pieces and connections. You have some of the puzzle pieces put together incorrectly, in fact. And Jesus is the only one who sees the chain of events in their life in perfect clarity. It's not like you're not smart. It's not like you don't have intuition. It's just that there isn't a person who could put all these puzzle pieces together with perfect clarity. Jesus is the only one who can actually put this puzzle together and see all the pieces and lay it all out with perfect clarity and understand it all and actually help this person in their journey towards doing something different. The person that you're thinking of, with all of your positive and negative evaluations of them, they're better than you think they are. When you think your worst thoughts about them, they're better than that. And they're also worse off than they think they are. When they're thinking about how good they are, they're worse off than that. The only person who can see clearly and completely what actually needs fixed and changed and healed in their life is Jesus. And Jesus is inviting you today into generosity towards this person, whoever they are. He's inviting you to give to them without expecting anything back. He's inviting you to be like the Most High, full of mercy, kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. He's inviting you to have a generous view of this person. Now, you might say, yeah, but my memories. Yeah, you can't undo the memories that you have of this person. The puzzle pieces are the puzzle pieces. We can't undo the puzzle pieces. But you might be trying to jam the puzzle pieces together in ways that don't completely fit. You may be using your negative evaluation to determine causes of events that simply aren't accurate. And there might be pieces of the puzzle that are so painful to look at that they literally make you feel like you hate the entire puzzle of this person's life. Like, I don't even like looking at this. So I want to invite you to imagine yourself reaching out to those pieces that you've hooked together, however you've hooked them together. Well, they did this and they did that and they did that, and I think I know how these all hook together. And feel yourself taking those puzzle pieces and actually unhooking them. Unhook each piece. And as you unhook each piece, I want to invite you to slide it across the table to Jesus and say to Jesus, Jesus, I don't know where this piece goes. I need your help. This piece hurts me deeply. Help me have a generous view of this person. And when you've finished sliding the puzzle over to Jesus, Jesus says something to you about all of it. What's Jesus saying? So take some time listening. There are some pieces of this person's puzzle that include pictures of you. They include pictures of what this person did to you. And when you notice that you are in the puzzle, you say, wow, I thought this was their puzzle. But Jesus reaches to a shelf behind him and takes down another puzzle box, and you notice, oh, it's the puzzle of me. And Jesus gestures to the two puzzles, the one in front of him, of that other person, and the one in the box, the one of you, and he says, well, actually these two puzzles go together. These puzzles are interconnected. They're all a set. They all connect. And so Jesus opens up your box. It's the chain of events of your life, all laid out. Only Jesus can put your puzzle together right. And he begins to lay out the pieces, the chain of events of your life. And you hear yourself say to Jesus, Jesus, you're the only one who really knows how to free up my energy so that I can actually make the changes that I need the most. You know the healing that I need. Show me how to understand myself. What is the work that I need to open myself up to? What do I need to do differently? What do I need to receive? What does Jesus say to you? You've been so caught up in longing for change in other people, but now you hear Jesus ask you a question. Jesus says, what if you embodied the change that you're looking for? What would it mean for your energy, your time, your focus, your money, your behavior, your choices, your commitments, if you embodied the change you've been looking for in this other person? And there's an answer there inside of you. And it feels scary. It feels scary to say that answer out loud to Jesus. But you know the answer is there in your mind. What is that answer? Say it to Jesus. And finally, you hear Jesus speak this promise. Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, it will be poured into your lap. For with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Amen. Thank you for joining us for a Sunday sermon from Netart's Friends Church. We hope you'll join us soon for one of our in-person worship gatherings. For more information, hop on over to netartsfriends.org. God's peace be with you, friends.